Selamat pagi, everyone. My name is Andrew Campbell. I'm the Chief Executive of the Australian Centre for International Agricultural Research, and it's my great pleasure and honour to be your moderator this morning. What did people think about yesterday? It should be obvious to most of you by now that you're not at an ordinary conference. And I think on behalf of everyone, certainly I'm feeling comfortable as a member of the International Organising Committee that we haven't organised just another procession of 45-minute talking heads, that we've tried to make it as interactive and as flexible as possible, and that's working very well so far. It's fantastic to be at a climate conference where I haven't seen a single hockey stick. I haven't seen any graphs about how the world's getting hotter or about weather events and so on. We're finally moving on into the solution space. Tremendous evidence of good ideas and innovation into practice. And please, if you haven't already done so, do some homework and look at those marvellous posters outside. At the parallel session I was in, there was a terrific observation that we had a bunch of papers on gender, and none of them were just about counting women. We've moved on to much more practical and productive things. But as Bruce reminded us yesterday morning, we're not on track. We've got 11 growing seasons left to reach the SDGs, and we are nowhere near on track. So there's a sense of frustration and of urgency. There's a lot of innovations in this room, there's a lot of solutions in this room, there's an enormous amount in the parallel sessions and on the posters and so on. But again, yesterday morning we heard the familiar lament that the pilot never fails, but the pilot never scales. How do we take these candle lights in the darkness and turn them into a floodlight of solutions? Bruce also made the startling observation, which hadn't occurred to me before, but of course it should have as a member of the System Council of the CGIAR, that across our 9,000 or 10,000 scientists in the CG system, we have a handful of finance experts. It was interesting for me recently to be at a meeting in Singapore convened by The Economist magazine, and I think I'm the only person here who was also at that meeting. The private sector, maybe I haven't been talking to the right people, but it seems to me the private sector is conspicuously absent here, considering the scaling challenge in front of us. Considering what we need to do in finance, insurance, social impact investing, the patient capital that people have referred to, huge numbers, lots of zeros, trillions of dollars of apparent investment capital that's out there. Where are the people who actually make the decisions about that capital, and how do we get them here? So we've got some real challenges there. Sonia, in her presentation, of course, reminded us that we have to think about the consumption end, and that takes us into the fiendishly complicated and contested world of human diet, human preferences, human values, and the way in which the food system works. I'm finding an interesting tension here. We're at a climate smart agriculture conference, but our hashtag is transform food systems. Now, to me, there's a bit in the middle of the Venn diagram there, but they're not the same thing, at least not the way in which we've done climate smart agriculture in the past. Transforming food systems takes you into the public health space. And if you think climate change is contested, try nutrition. We were in Pacific Week of Agriculture last week, talking to the coconut sector. And the people in the coconut processing sector are pointing out that the American what's it called? The American Heart Foundation guidelines put coconut in the worst possible category, coconut oil in the worst possible category for human health. And that's driven entirely by their vegetable oil sector, which is politically very powerful. This is an interesting space when you start to get into telling people what to eat. And you come up against some very powerful actors. And so one of the things that's missing for me in this that I encourage us to think about is power. Why is it when the science has been so clear for so long that we are where we are now? Some might posit it's because there are some extremely powerful vested interests that are doing very nicely out of the status quo. And until we understand that, we're likely to be talking to ourselves in conferences like this and lamenting how off track we are. So thinking about those is another challenge I'll put to you. So for many of us, our comfort zone is on-farm, agriculture-centric interventions, helping the 500 and something million smallholder farmers. And that's where we've built our careers, and that's where there's still very, very worthy work to be done. No doubt about it. But if ultimately we're to help those people achieve our poverty reduction objectives as well as our SDG 2 objectives, we have to think about these broader systemic issues. And that takes us into difficult discussions around where are the boundaries and potentially very new partnerships as we think about our interface with that public health sector and with the whole food system, not just the producing food system. So there are some brief observations from me reflecting on yesterday. Today we've got a very exciting day. We're going to go shortly into a wonderful keynote, and I'll introduce our keynote speaker very soon. And then we're going to have a big facts panel discussion. I hope you've all not just got your app ready, but you've hit the refresh button so that you've refreshed the content on your app. Because you're going to be using the conference app again to see how much we know about some of the basic facts about the agri-food system. And then that will lead into a big facts panel discussion. I'll introduce the speakers there in due course. We're going to just review how much we know about some of the fundamentals here. And then we're going to have a bunch of speed talks. These speed talks have been selected through the abstracts that were submitted earlier. And they present different perspectives on breakthrough innovations for climate-smart agriculture. They'll be 5 minutes each. The keynote will be 15 minutes. I remember once having to agreeing to give a keynote in Chiang Mai, I think it was, on the water, energy, food nexus. It was about 10 years ago or 15 years ago. And that's when I was very used to giving 45, 50 minutes, sometimes hour-long keynotes. And it was only when I was in the plane, I shudder to admit this, that I realised I had a 15-minute keynote. I thought, what on earth am I doing getting in a plane to travel halfway around the world to give a 15-minute talk? But it meant that I had to throw out my 1 hour talk, and I had to really think about what I needed to say. And it was the best keynote I'd ever given. And since then, I've thought that any keynote longer than 15 minutes means that the speaker really doesn't know what they're talking about. So I'm delighted that this conference has followed that pattern of keeping people to very short talks. So we're going to have a bunch of solutions-focused talks, then we're going to go to coffee, and we won't be back here in plenary until 3 p.m. Lunch, again, will be at the Paddy restaurant. The staff in orange t-shirts will show you where to go. Don't forget to visit the Cool Innovations Corner and check out those various exhibits. And I'd encourage you to think about the food you're eating during the breaks. We have got people from CCAFS, from Wageningen, and a group of Cliffgrad students are measuring the volume of food we eat and the volume of food we waste during lunches and other breaks. And we'll be updating you about that at the end of the conference to see how we went and what our food footprint was at this conference. And again, one of the criteria for choosing the venue for this event was the extent to which the venue was prepared to work with us on the sustainability agenda. And the IANA's been very good in that regard. So, there'll be a couple of hot topics presentations this afternoon in this room, as well as 2 parallel side events on building resilient food and agriculture systems, following up from the UN Climate Action Summit, and the second one on using science to inform actionable NDC priorities for agriculture, organised by the ASEAN Climate Resilience Network.